Call the Planning Commission work session for August 11th, 2026 to order at 6:05 p.m. And with that, I will turn it over to staff.
Thank you, Commissioner Pape. So we have two items here tonight for the work session. The first project is located at 1866 Fairview Boulevard. This is the Ascension Freestanding Emergency Room concept plan and variance discussions, and they do have representatives here, so we'll call them forward and let them present to you all for discussion.
Good evening. My name is John Richard Patterson with Kimley Horn. I'm the civil engineer on the project. I would like to start off by thanking staff so far for having multiple meetings with us and working through this site plan, especially with the zoning ordinance change that's come through, so thank you. I'll start off by describing the site plan. We are requesting some variances from the BZA after this, but wanted to bring it before you to get your feedback ahead of time. And then happy to field any questions that you may have. So right now, the site plan is roughly a 6-acre site that will house, made up of 3 parcels. It'll house a 16,000 square foot MOB that will be anchored by DMA. And then the second building is a 10,000 square foot freestanding emergency department that will be by Ascension St. Thomas. And then just to describe the site, there's a shared parking lot with a main access off of Highway 100 that aligns with Fernville today. So there is also a dedicated left turn lane into the site that's proposed for those coming eastbound from the city center. That was noted as needed in the TIA, which has also been worked on with staff and TDOT for blessing that. We have a second access point off of Audubon Cove that is more of it's a secondary access point, but it's also a way for our ambulances to get to the rear of the building with direct access, minimizing conflicts with parking that could, prevent them from getting to the building quicker. You'll see some green space that's reserved over to the east of the building, and so that plays into some of the variances, but yes, you can see it. There's a dashed line in the back that is reserved for one day if a helipad is deemed necessary or appropriate for this location to help serve the residents, that we could implement that in the rear. And so that space that remains open and unutilized is for that flight path if we were to place a helipad back there. So shared detention pond, shared utilities, shared parking. We are coming before the BZA. We've made an application. We're still finalizing it, and then we'll go before them for 2 building variances and 3 site plan variances. And so the site plan did begin before the ordinance change. And so we have reviewed the ordinance. We've compared against what's changed in the site, and I've identified hardships that would lead to those requests. And so with the building, there's a glazing requirement that is more for commercial and not appropriate for medical because of privacy purposes. So we'll be coming in requesting a reduced glazing. There's also no longer in CD4, you're not allowed to have flat roofs, which is more appropriate for these commercial type developments that have mechanical equipment on top. Then the site variances, there's a 6 to 18 foot building setback. So it's basically a build 2 where the buildings are supposed to be pulled up to the right of way. And you can see those dashed lines faintly following the property line. I'm going to go through these and then I'll go through the reasons. The second one would be the parking in front of the building. So code requires it to be behind the building. And then the building lot frontage. So there's a specific percentage of the building that has to be fronting the property line. So starting from there, the helipad takes up a decent amount of that, which naturally is, it is a little bit of a self-appointed hardship there, but then also aligning Fernville also has a wider drive coming in between the 2 sites. But the building setback, and the parking in front of the buildings kind of coincide together. We'll do sidewalks along Highway 100, and there's a roughly an 8 to 10 foot grade change between the road and the site at the corner of Autobahn and Highway 100. So having a sidewalk low, a building up high, doesn't really follow the intent of that. Let's build everything up close, downtown, urban, walkable feel. Then also Fire Marshal made a comment that if there was an emergency or a fire that they needed to fight from the front of the building, they would prefer not to have to shut down Highway 100. They would prefer to be able to pull into the site, park in the front, serve 3 to 4 sides of those buildings. Also, as you pull into the site, it gives you, in emergency situations or stressful situations, you can clearly see as you pull in, you've got the emergency entrance on the front where you can drop folks off, and then on the west side, you'll be able to look directly at the front entrance to DMA. So, with that, happy to answer any questions you have, thoughts. Sorry, one more comment. You can see there's some green space left to the north too. There was some comments from the residents when we had those early meetings about preserving some of that tree. It's a very wooded towards the back of the site, so we are trying to reserve as much tree line as possible to the north behind the helipad.
Great, thank you for that overview. Does staff have anything they'd like to add before we open it up to questions from other commissioners?
Nothing right now.
Okay. The one thing I'll ask before I turn it over to everybody else, what's the general schedule? Have they applied for their variances moving toward BZA and kind of expected meetings?
They have applied for their variances. We have not established that meeting date yet. And then following that, they would apply for their site development plan.
I'll open it up to any questions from commissioners.
Mr. Vice Chair. Good evening, Mr. John Robert. You said that this is 3 parcels. Is that prior to the development?
Correct.
And then it'll all be one singular parcel?
Correct.
Post the development?
Mm-hmm.
One of the items that I was looking at, if you were to parcel this out and have within CD4, it does permit for parking to be a standalone use within CD4. So if you parceled it out and utilized the internal drive and parking as principal uses, you could potentially still meet the setback requirements of the buildings because you would then be setting your property lines where you need them to be without having to seek that variance.
So you're suggesting that the potentially setting an east-west property line between the buildings and the parking?
Correct, and
Okay.
utilizing an internal drive section. And then it was done, there's an example if you want to look at it, it's on 31, I believe, coming out of Spring Hill. Walmart performed the same idea here. Their parking is still located in the front of their Walmart store. They utilize an internal drive, and their front property line for the actual store is their front sidewalk at the front of their building. So they separated it into 2 parcels to be able to meet the requirements without having to seek a variance for that.
That's a creative idea, Mr. Greer. We'll take a look at that.
While our chairperson's settling in, any other questions from other commissioners? I have one quick question about the access. You mentioned that DOT approved that left turn pocket. Do you guys kind of do a full traffic study and go through that with them, and everything's been cleared on that?
They have, yes, we did a traffic study. We submitted to TDOT, we submitted to Curtis for review, and we have an email saying that we can proceed that direction, though we'll obviously want to see full design plans
Yeah.
prior to approval.
So they've basically signed off on the concept
Yes,
based
sir.
on what they've seen.
And we have that in writing.
And you can't quite see it, but there's a median opening kind of just west of there. Does that stay open when you guys build that left turn lane?
No, sir. It would, This whole intersection is very weird. And so that was the thought process there was to close the, and this was on a call with TDOT. They're actually the ones who made the suggestion, was to close that median and keep the one to the west that's in front of the post office open versus closing the one in front of the post office, since that's the last chance you can turn around.
Right. Thanks.
Was there ever any thought to put in an emergency access pathway behind the DMA facility for fire and life safety use?
There's not right now. There is the grade change drops from about 835 down to 827. So there's a significant grade change back there, but we could, if fire wanted to look at that, we could look at putting emergency access back there.
I know at the Pearl, they have a significant grade change behind that building, and there was a retaining wall that was constructed and I want to say it's like a 12-foot paved path around the backside of that building so that the fire department had 360-degree access to the building.
We can look at that.
Madam Chair,
Sir.
question for you.
Yes, sir.
Some hospitals have external MRI facilities, trailers that they would do imaging or some other function. Has that been discussed yet with the hospital? And God forbid there was ever another outbreak of something that needed to have tents or any other external facilities. Has that been approached yet?
I have not had that discussion with them. That being said, I mean, the point of these freestanding EDs is to help reach out to and support their main campuses, but we do plan for, mobile units like that. I would say that if we wanted to, there is the green space that's being reserved for the helipad, the flight path. If we needed to, you could set up there if they needed to in the green space.
Well, and then that question kind of extends to the board, that is there something that we need ahead of time to designate these areas, or would all those facilities that would be erected be considered temporary? And this is kind of a new thing for our area, so I think it's worthy of a short discussion. Because you say green space, well, I don't know if you're going to be able to put that kind of a facility on top of some grass. There's going to need to be some hardscape and some electrical work that needs to be done to power those units. So I know this is probably not the perfect meeting to answer all those questions, but I think it's valid to, put that into discussion at some point.
And I can take that back to the team and have that discussion with them.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
One quick question. A couple things questions I've received from the public is just asking about the amount of traffic that will be generated from a site like this. Can you just roughly estimate daily car count coming to and from the facility?
Doing the math earlier today. So it was roughly 521 average daily trips between the two. That's including the traffic study, and that'll come in with the site plan.
Thank you.
It was enough to warrant the turn lane, but not a signal. We did look at if a signal would be warranted here.
Is there anything else to discuss on this item? All right.
Thank you. Appreciate
Thank
y'all's
you.
time.
All right, item B, discussion on 1876 Fairview Boulevard Residential Development Concept Plan. Do we have a representative here tonight? Thank you. If you will state your name and address for the record, please.
I'm Troy Gardner. I am the landscape architect and project manager with Cape Dawson, here tonight on behalf of River Forest. So the property we have, do we have the plan available? And would you mind zooming out just a little bit, just so we can see if that's possible? Okay. Yeah, so like you mentioned, it's located at 1876 Fairview Boulevard. It's about a 40-acre site, and it's zone CD3 with the current zoning. We are looking at doing a residential, single-family neighborhood that follows the CD3 zone per your new zoning ordinance. We're meeting all of those requirements. It's 54 lots at 1.3 dwelling units per acre. There's a 25-foot landscape buffer. It meets all the lot setbacks, retains all the tree canopy that's required, and provides all the civic space required per your new ordinance. We're really here tonight, here at the work session, for two reasons: is to get your general feedback for this project here on the front end of the early stages of the project, but also to discuss access. That's what I was hoping we could hopefully see if we zoomed out a little more on the exhibit, if that's possible. So the site right now only has frontage on Horn Tavern Road. As you can see from the exhibit, there are some environmental constraints up there. There's a stream buffer, a floodway, and the slopes rising from Horn Tavern are generally fairly steep back there. And then we have the TVA easement that we would have to cross as well. Because of that, we were looking at other opportunities to explore access, another location. To the south of the site, and you can barely see it at the bottom of the green civic space, there's like a little dash line there. There is an existing access easement that ranges from 20 to 30 feet wide that goes out to Fairview Boulevard. We were hoping to explore that as an option to access Fairview Boulevard. However, it's our understanding, and I think you guys just touched on it with the last project, the median cut that's right across from that access point is being closed for a left-hand turn into Ascension. So that makes that a little bit more difficult right there. But we do think that would be, trying to get access from Fairview Boulevard is still something we would be interested in pursuing. We think it would be, it's a flatter access. There are no environmental constraints that direction. And so, and there's multiple driveways out front. This exhibit shows if it was zoomed out a little further. And so that would be an opportunity that we could look at for trying to help clean that up, from a safety standpoint. We've reached out to Ascension to see, hey, could we possibly do some type of shared access coming through their site? I know they line up with Fernvale and they have the left turn lane coming in. So we would love that opportunity to see if there was a way that it could be mutually beneficial for both of us there. If that's something that this commission thinks would be a good idea, we would certainly welcome, your ideas on how we could maybe approach that as two developments to get to that goal.
Any questions or comments from the Planning Commission?
Madam Chair,
Sure.
just one comment. The civic green space, what can you explain a little bit more about what that is?
Yeah, it's still to be determined. I think your ordinance allows multiple different types of civic space. So there's a green and a square. I forget exactly all the names, but we would be working on that. And, we're still at the early phases of this, so we could certainly, discuss that in more detail with you and get a feel for what the commission wants.
Okay. And if you're asking for input.
Sure,
right,
absolutely.
And green space is great, multi-use space for the subdivision. I personally really like that, right? So any subdivision that has that multi-use green space, that is always a plus for me.
Input-wise, obviously, access from Fairview Boulevard would be great. I mean,
Yes.
we can't do anything about, enforcing Ascension to work with you on it, but if you could make it happen, that would be great.
I was curious if there was any type of shared access, required from a neighboring parcel to another for future development. I guess it's the neighboring development to our east. I know they have kind of a closed off loop. We are providing, connections for future connection to the west and to the south. If you can see those arrows and the network, the street network. So, just for good practice, good neighbors for future development. Didn't know if there was anything along those lines.
Sir?
So a couple just concerns off the top of my head that I think should be probably discussed a little deeper, maybe not tonight, but just in future to consider. The topography in that area, as you know, is pretty wild. Horn Tavern Road, traffic issues on that road are becoming a problem just with the additional interest that is the properties on that road are bringing in. And also Horn Tavern has had some flooding experiences due to runoff from other subdivisions that have been built in the past. I know there's a handful of streams and runoff that's going to come from this. So can you just speak through that? Like, have those concerns been brought to your attention from the planning department, or where are we at with that?
No, so we've had several different plans before planning for a long while. We were really waiting to get through the adoption of the new zoning ordinance before we really pushed forward, because we did want to make sure we were complying with that and not get caught up in the middle of any kind of changes there. This map, it includes a slope analysis. So you can see there in those darker shades, that's the steeper slopes. So we've really tried to focus all of the development in the flatter areas of the site. I think we've done a great job of working around the environmental constraints. Yes, I totally agree with you about the concerns on Horn Tavern. That's one of the reasons why we're trying to get access to the south.
I guess and this might not be necessarily a concern for you, but more for us and our planning department to keep in mind. As Ascension was just up talking about traffic flow on the Fairview Boulevard and the way that that's going to impact that just overall situation. Audubon Cove is relatively new. We've got this, if you did gain access to Fairview Boulevard, now we've got multiple projects, each doing independent traffic studies, right? And I just want to make sure that we're capturing potential traffic flow when considering these, just if all of these were to move forward, what that is going to look like instead of just your project individually.
Yeah, of course, when we got to that stage of the game, we would certainly be coordinating with staff and scoping out our traffic study.
Madam Chair? Just to give you some feedback, relative to the access, obviously getting something to Highway 100 would be great, but I encourage the shared access for sure. The goal is to minimize, not add curb cuts, and everything we just heard in the last application with closing that median break. I think you're on the right track, whether it's through Ascension or whether it's getting over to Audubon Cove through their property or something to that. I would highly encourage some type of shared access. The plan itself, nothing jumps out at me. You got a lot of topo to work with. It looks like you guys have indicated that some of your tree save is along the edges. I would highly encourage that, to hold on to that and have some undisturbed buffers around the edges. I think that was the hope with the new code, is that people would do that and maintain some trees around the edges and not just grade right up to the property line. So would highly encourage that. But otherwise, I don't see anything concerning with the plan.
Madam Chair.
Sir?
Just want to point out, since we have both of you in the room tonight, Kimley Horn and Pape Dawson, hopefully you can work together on this. I think it would be great to have at least some form of shared area there coming down. It may be able to solve the 360-degree access around the DMA building that we just spoke about. That is on your western border, but would be on the eastern border of this easement. And so I know that there are a couple other property owners that y'all have been working with to try and work through this solution, but that could potentially, with some improvement along that easement, could help the fire department be able to have 360-degree access to the DMA medical office building.
Yeah, we were just discussing that, and I think that could be an option as well.
Is there any further questions or comments from the Planning Commission on this item?
Right?
All
We
right,
appreciate your time and input. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, well, at 6:32 p.m., I call this work session closed. We will adjourn and meet back at 7 p.m. for our regular Planning Commission meeting.